Man, Twitch is nonstop with those SNL ads. I keep seeing it over and over.
Well, if you're seeing it, then no one else can hear you complaining except the subscribers.
That's true. For at least another 20 seconds, celebrating 50 years of SNL.
Praise Lorne.
All right. And the ad's over for me, so I see us live.
Yay.
Same here.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Pull up my notes. All right, you guys ready?
Let's
Ready?
do it.
Welcome to episode 73 of the TCCG Roundtable. We're your hosts, Dragon Rider, Dankestad, and Ron Mexico. How's it going?
Hey, good to be here.
Good to be here for sure. Because it has been one of those work weeks, and I'm ready to talk card games and enjoy my weekend.
Hey, it's Friday. Let's
It's
go.
Friday. Woo.
Yeah, it's been a hell of a week.
Amen to that.
Yes.
So, you guys do anything fun though? Playing any card games? Because I've been getting ready for some Universes Nationals, and not to toot my own horn, but if anyone in my play group is watching, you got to start beating me more so I don't get a big head, and so you guys can start winning. We're practicing up. It's time.
Firing shots to the practice group. I like it.
Oh yeah.
I haven't been doing a whole lot of gaming outside of Hearthstone. Been doing my typical stream stuff, and actually kind of a fun little thing I started lately just because queue times were incredibly slow on the America server. So once I hit Legend on Americas, I was like, all right, let's just climb to Legend on Asia, and then I did that, and I didn't want to play more on Americas for long queue times. So I'm like, well, you know what? I've never even done an EU Legend climb before. Let's see if we can do that. So the game is still like pretty free to play friendly. I had like basically no collection on EU, and I was able to just log in and get catch up packs and all these things and make the deck that I wanted to play. So I just was able to do that. And now I'm climbing on EU. So that's been kind of fun.
That's cool.
Helps me forget about the fact that the winter storm really kind of messed up everything in my area, and we did not have access to water for multiple days. So yeah, that was not great. It's restored now, and also there's a winter storm tonight, so little concerned, but surely it'll be fine. Fingers crossed.
I have been doing a lot of like planning and organizing and getting myself ready for like trying to achieve my goals. It sounds so nerdy, but that's what I've been doing. I made a whole like year calendar board. I bought one of those like big trifold cardboard boards and ripped apart a calendar for the year and literally like put them all on there so I have the whole year at a glance. I've got like different colored sticky notes for different things. Yeah, planning my
Nice.
YouTube content, like that's what I've been doing. In addition to like a little bit of Hearthstone playing, a little bit of gathering all our card game news and all that kind of stuff, and resting because my body has been beating me up this week too. So that's been my focus this week.
Solid. It's a good start to January. Do some planning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the thing is, hopefully I can execute on that. But I guess while we're at the top of the show, real quick, I know that we kind of mentioned. I don't know if I actually had mentioned this when we talked about our goals and um, kind of plans for like the new year and stuff. But I had put together. I did a um, no, because this was last weekend. Yeah, I did like a whole productivity planning summit for like 5 to 6 hours every day for 2 days. Um, and built myself like a vision board and everything for the next few years. And I had found this image when I was looking for podcasts. I had found this image that said podcasts that will change your life. And I was just like, yes, that's what I want to do. So my goal is definitely like in some way, whether it's, me sharing personal stories or like, us as hosts, like sharing personal things that connect with people or being able to share a lot of like card game news and concepts and different stuff that help people improve their gameplay or get more connected with card games or find new card games or communities, something like that. Just, I don't know, that's like my big goal is just podcasts that will change your life. I found that and I was like, that's what I want to do. So that's kind of been my focus. Yep.
That's awesome.
Hell yeah.
Oh, man. But, we got all year for all that. Today, though, we got Q1. And I remember Don and I might have alluded to the fact that there's a lot going on this year. And today we're going to talk about it. So, what do we have on the docket for this quarter?
All right. So just for this quarter, we'll go over some other news after that. But just for quarter one, we have Flesh and Blood has the Hunted set coming soon. They have a world premiere in Prague happening January 17th. January 24th is their pre-release, and then January 31st will be the full release that you can find the product in stores. Pokemon has some stuff going on. They have the Scarlet and Violet Prismatic Evolutions expansion that will also be releasing January 17th, so very soon. Then they did just announce the Scarlet and Violet Journey Together expansion, and they announced that that will be releasing on March 28th. Pokemon TCG Pocket will be getting a new feature sometime in January this month that will allow certain cards to be traded. And they did say that the selection of cards that can be traded will gradually expand. So, not exactly sure what that means yet, but that will be added and start up sometime this January. For Star Wars Unlimited, Jump to Lightspeed is coming on March 14th, and they are kind of doing some of the art reveals and have started up the actual card reveals as well for Jump to Lightspeed. And they also announced with that they are releasing a new product called the Carbonite Edition Booster Packs that are going to launch alongside Jump to Lightspeed, which will contain variants of cards. So they're kind of aiming these at collectors. They are like $25 per pack, per booster pack, so definitely expensive. But they showcase like 5 different kind of art variations of the cards. So if you are into collecting and getting different variations of cards, those are going to be coming in March. And I'm going to kick it over to Ron to talk about some Hearthstone.
All right. So for Hearthstone coming up, I think we already talked about how they did like a little map showing us what the expansions are going to be for this year, but there is a mini set that everyone is very anxiously awaiting to have a shakeup to the current meta, and it's coming soon for sure. Any day now, probably. We do not have an announcement yet of when the mini set will be. Um, but they confirmed that it would be in January, and they haven't confirmed anything else. There is a lot of chatter from the community that like it's likely going to be somewhere around the 21st. We expected there probably would be an announcement maybe at some point this week. There wasn't, but there probably will be an announcement soon, and we're probably going to get the mini set to play with in the next couple weeks, most likely. So yeah, that's our Hearthstone news for now. Stay tuned.
All
All right.
right. But that isn't all. We've got more games to talk about too. I mean, I know for me personally, Universes is in a pretty exciting state. If you are into solo leveling, that deck is out today. And I know for Nationals coming up, some of those cards are probably going to be sliding into my deck there. So I'm definitely going to be picking up those cards at my game store as soon as I can be. But yeah, there's at least another game that we can talk about that Don and I have been pretty involved with lately. You can see it just under me, hiding right there next to Magic, and that's the Wild Hearts TCG. So yeah, we've talked about that Kickstarter a lot, and boy, it's here, it's happening, it's been going, and I'm excited. I've pledged, and there's lots of cool stuff. Why don't you take us in there, Don, and we might have some cool stuff to actually show off here, don't we?
We sure do, yeah. And as you mentioned, there is the Kickstarter. I did do a whole video, like kind of deep diving into what you can find in the Wild Hearts Kickstarter for those interested. So you can check that out. But um, basically, it is the Foundations set that they are doing this Kickstarter for. It has like 2-player starter decks. It has a lot of alternate art cards in some booster packs. And this foundation set is a little bit over 50 cards. And that does include a couple of like tokens and things like that. So, there's a lot of special cards, and there's kind of big focus on like getting cards into players' hands, and the again alternate art, which these will be the only time that this alternate art for these cards are printed. So it's pretty exciting. And yeah, we do have a couple of alternate art images to reveal. So would you like to go first and show your reveal, Dankest?
Oh, yes. So I am a little bit disappointed that I have to share this because this card is so gorgeous and I want it all to myself. It is so, so great. And this is one of my favorite cards in Ferocity. We have Sacrificial Bond. So, Don, can you get a Sacrificial Bond up here for the crowd? There it is. See? So, well, the art style for the base card is, showing something going on in battle. This art here from our good friend Chris is a lot more abstract. And one thing I've been told to point out, because I've been bad about this in the past, is looking at this flavor text. So you'll see here, there are tamers willing to take a hit for their creatures, and creatures willing to do the same. The manifestation of that looks something like this. And seeing the idea of that bond so powerful that it's expressed this way is extremely, extremely cool. And I know that while I do like the other card, I love this flavor and this portrayal so much more that I'm hoping that I can get 2 of these to be playing in my decks once we get product in our hands.
Yeah, I love this art. This is so cool. I I feel like I'm probably going to age myself. We do this our running joke every week is that it's Friday, and like every other week is a running joke about our age. So here you go. Here's this week's running joke for my age. The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Does anybody remember that book and the art
I've
style?
Yeah, I've read The Very Hungry Caterpillar and another and Bye Bye Black Bear actually just 2 days ago, to my niece. So yeah, Eric Carl is going strong.
That's what this art reminds me of. And I don't know, but that is like, it has such a nostalgic feel to it for me. So it's like, I love this art. Like, and then of course putting the flavor text with it is super cool too. That's awesome. I
Yeah,
really want to
and
open this one.
Yeah, I can see it for sure.
yeah.
It definitely brings Eric Carl vibes. I like it.
Yeah, but so am I the only one who get the card? Just me, right?
No. You can't have all that glory to yourself, sir. We do have another card to reveal, and this is the Lucky Hat. The original kind of base card kind of just shows the hat like sitting on a table. Um, but in this, again, you kind of see that um, that kind of bond between the tamer and the creature, and definitely some cool visuals in terms of like the landscape and stuff in the background as well. Flavor text, of course, we gotta, talk about the flavor text. All that swagger and confidence Titus has seen wrapped in that hat of his. That's right. Love it.
So one thing I will point out though is that looking at this art, I don't know if we've seen anywhere like this before, have we?
I don't think so. In terms of like the lore and things that have been revealed so far, I don't think we've seen this kind of landscape and stuff before yet.
Yeah, because other than the background of the gel ice, I don't think we've seen much ice. So I am looking forward to seeing more about this field and this region and seeing maybe what that brings to the game state. But I love this one too. And Lucky Hat has been one of my favorites, much to the frustration of everyone I play against. But this card is so good to most people. And it is, I think, just like the most flexible one. Do you need draw? You got it. Do you need your innervate equivalent? If you're a Hearthstone player, here it is. It just does everything you could ask for. And if this is just a beautiful portrayal of it. I am like so looking forward to these. And if you're watching Wild Hearts team, put some of these in the mod on Friday night. You won't. Let us see them as we get them.
All
But
right.
yeah, so there we go.
Sweet.
There are Wild Hearts cards, and boom. Now, talk us through this competitive side of things. Ron, you mentioned an announcement of an announcement. Is that all we got?
You mean for competitive Hearthstone, they have announced that there will still be something esports related, or well, I mean, I suppose it's possible that they could announce, "Hey, esports is dead," but probably not going to be the case. We did get an announcement that there will be an announcement about the state of esports for Hearthstone and what their plans are for 2025. Um, so far, all we know is that they mentioned the latter finishes for January will not count towards anything competitive. And we got that announcement on like the 7th or something. So, not too much time wasted by any of the grinders who want to try to guarantee that they have their best chance possible to compete for Masters Tours and the like. Um, it's just more stay tuned for now. In true Hearthstone fashion, we love getting announcements of announcements, and then we will eagerly await that announcement that might have some real information.
For sure. Anything on your wish list though for that announcement when it comes around?
I mean, if you're gonna ask me for a wish list, sure. Do I think it's realistic? No, but if if you're asking me what I'm hoping for, I want them to announce that they will expand the Masters Tour field and qualifications to like 400 players, like it used to be a bunch of years ago. Because if that were the case, then I would suddenly start trying to compete in Hearthstone official Hearthstone tournaments again. But as long as it's anything expanded over what it was last year, I think that's a good step in the right direction. and there was more infusion of money from the China Hearthstone scene again. So we can all have some copium and hope that something more promising might come. We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, I can say personally that I agree with you. And even if it comes at the cost of the prize pool, I'm hoping we get the return of the MTQ. Just because I think that that system was the most participation in competitive Hearthstone that we had. And while I didn't get to play in them myself at the time, it was really awesome to see friends and other people get enthusiastic about this chance. Hey, I've got 4 hours on a weekend. I can play in this tournament. I can play in this event. And hey, if I do well, I can make it to the big leagues and play at the Masters Tour. And I think
Yep.
that giving, hundreds or thousands of people the chance to get into the ecosystem and play is just such a big swing over, the 20 or so that we get now in a given year that, it would be awesome and definitely sort of reinvigorate the scene a bit.
Yeah, I don't want to get anyone's hopes up too high for believing in that to come back. I do kind of think that the MTQ system is probably dead and gone for good, but you never know. It's possible it could get revived, and there were some great memories with the system like that. I mean, uh, I happened to qualify for Masters Tour one season in literally the final tournament of the season. I didn't even realize it when I entered it that it was the last one and the last chance. And I had to actually win it in order to make it. And I wound up winning it and then finding out retroactively that this was your last chance, by the way. And that was kind of incredible. So, like,
So
there's lots of really
awesome.
fun memories attached. Maybe it could come back. You don't know. It's possible.
Yeah. I mean, I won't rule it out. And I just hope that someone else gets a chance to make another story like that in their Hearthstone
Hmm.
days.
For sure.
But yeah, outside of Hearthstone, though, we still do have some other competitive events going on. Lorcana's North American Championship is happening at Disneyland right now in California. They got the World Championship coming up. That's the qualification that's at stake here. And, you know, hopefully everyone who was there affected by the fires is safe and doing all right. For Magic, we have an arena open this weekend. So get your decks ready, play there, get up to $2,000 in the prize pool, which is exciting. And boy, Flesh and Blood has a lot. They've got their World Tour Portland in February, coming up the 7th to the 9th. Super Armory, a Battle Hardened, and a ProQuest. Then 400 Road to Nationals events are taking place from February 8th to March 2nd. So that's got Classic Constructed and Booster Draft for the Hunted, that new set that's coming out. So yeah, maybe that'll spark my interest. I sure do love drafting, and drafting for stakes. Nothing beats it. These are open events; anyone can play, and the top four will qualify for nationals. So do that, get your prizes, get your cold foils, maybe, and hey, maybe I'll see you there. Then Star Wars Unlimited has their planetary qualifier season ongoing. And last but not least is Universes. I alluded to this before, but we are in national championship season. So in Oceania, players are competing right now, today, from the 10th to the 12th. Europe will be next week from the 17th to the 19th. And then North America will be the 24th to the 26th. So it's been a pretty wild year for universes. So we'll see how nationals and then the upcoming world championships pan out. But I know that I'm going to have a fun time with my local play group there. Get to send off some of our favorite cards from sets 2 and 3. And hey, if you're there, say hi. Just like the streets of Ohio, the streets of Dallas Fort Worth are not going to be safe for those dates in January. So hit me up.
All right. And then before we jump into our main topic, I did want to mention a couple other things that aren't necessarily like happening in quarter one, or don't really have like, a specific time frame to them. But couple things here. There has been some talk, some speculation, some different things being passed around for Disney Lorcana after a job posting went live. And basically, people are saying there is the potential production of an official digital client being made. The job posting is for an executive producer, and it lists some like kind of requirements for needing experience in game development, including the full life cycle of developing and operating mobile and or PC games. It kind of has an indication for significant experience developing and or producing digital TCGs, and it even lists like needing a passion for TCGs and an affinity for Disney Lorcana and Disney, and having existing Lorcana TCG knowledge or an eagerness to learn. So all of that is kind of like hinting at them making an official digital client. There was also a social post put out by Calvin Kim, who is the senior producer for Disney Lorcana at Ravensburger North America Inc. And he posted, "Hello, at Ravensburger North America Inc., we are seeking an EP to oversee the development of digital games in collaboration with external game studios. Interested? Please check out the job description. Cheers." So between those two things and like the job description listing certain things, there's definitely been some talk about Disney Lorcana maybe actually working on that official digital client. So some people are excited about that, some people maybe not so much, but I think overall from what I've seen so far is that people are kind of excited about that prospect. So that is kind of interesting. And then something that we didn't get to really chat about at the end of the year, because we were kind of on like a hiatus and everything was just kind of like happening all at once. So it was really hard to actually meet up and do the show. But there was a card game announced called the Gundam card game. So that was kind of announced last year. And just on January 6th, they did announce that there will be 4 starter decks coming, and those are going to be coming later this year on July 11th. So July 11th, 2025, the 4 starter decks for the Gundam card game. And they also showcased that some of the decks, like basically you can get like what seems like potentially an upgraded version called Gundam Assemble decks, that actually include a miniature that you can assemble and paint and play with the card game as well. So
That's a nice touch.
yeah, so pretty interesting there. But that is another card game that is going to be coming out this year that we can definitely keep our eyes on. So again, those 4 starter decks not coming until July, but wanted to at least bring that up and mention that as something that's happening this year.
I know I have a lot of friends who tend to poke fun at my card game hobby, but are really into Gundam. So it will be great to see when the shoe is on the other foot in just a few weeks.
Nice.
All right. Well, let's jump into our main topic, which is what we're calling the probability in practice, knowing when to take risks. And some of this we might base using math and probability to guide our decisions. But I think this is going to be kind of a bit of a free-flowing conversation just about like risk taking in card games, kind of figuring out when you want to take those risks in games, whether that is using math and probability or if it's just like learning the game and kind of using intuition to figure that out. But I'm going to open up the floor here to both of you. What do you think of like knowing when to take risks, and how has it helped your gameplay and improve your play?
Oof. That's a-
Yeah, loaded question. Go ahead, Dangus.
So I was just going to say there's so much to it. But the dirty secret, and this is coming from a person, who has a math degree, likes math, is that you only want to do the math when you have to. And while, of course, it's important and you're going to have to do it a lot, looking for those chances when you can, instead of doing math, take a more qualitative approach can be really handy. And I know that that has helped me a lot when it's come to getting an edge in some situations.
It's a good point. Yeah, I mean, technically, if you were, say, a supercomputer, you probably would benefit from doing the math in your head on every single turn for every single decision. But the reality of that is that it's going to be mentally exhausting and probably not even that beneficial for you if you're doing it all of the time. For like marginal gains that you might get, where it's like, okay, I think I maybe increased my win percentage by 0.05% by doing all of the math on what the absolute optimal play is here. Uh, and you don't need to go crazy on it. Just like you can sort of navigate the game the way that you generally know how to, the way that most games sort of play out, where you have a set amount of resources on each turn, and you might just want to try to optimize those resources based on what you have available in a just approximate sense. There's a lot of it that's just like feel for the game that you develop as you play more and more, and you're like, this is the kind of play that like feels right now. And then as you get later into the game, you can find yourself in some situations where it's like, okay, I know what's coming. And, the game's going to end probably in the next turn or two, especially with the way that my opponent is playing and what I know about their deck and the style of play that this is. So this is the moment, or there might be a couple of different times where you can kind of assess this is a moment where I need to make this choice. And then might be a good idea to do the math.
Well, I think then we can, you know, color this with an answer to what should be an obvious question. When do we need to do math in the first place? Why are we doing math at all? This is card games, not a test.
It's a
Oh
great
my
point.
gosh.
Do you like winning?
Well, you know me. Sometimes you know that I don't like it as much as I should. But I know the first situation, the number one, is you need your math when you're drawing cards from your deck, don't you? And this is where a lot of that probability comes in. We're going to shorthand all of that arithmetic stuff, like adding up damage, like some sort of nerd, and just cut right
There's a deck
to it.
tracker for that. It's fine.
Yeah. But right away, if you're looking for cards in your deck, right? How do you know what cards you're going to draw? How do you know how likely it is that your opponent's going to see a card? If you're playing a game with a resource system like, say, Magic the Gathering, how do you know how many resources you'll have on your next turn? What should you expect? And these are questions that do have an answer with math, and knowing that answer is much more powerful than not.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I agree. Like, I actually did a whole kind of deep dive episode about all the math and different ways that you will use math in Hearthstone specifically, as a guest on the Bread and Butter podcast, for kind of my fundamentals, recurring guest series, I guess we'll say. And yeah, if you actually sit down and think about it and list all the different things, even in just Hearthstone, but this can be applied to a lot of different card games in general. But as you mentioned, like you're gonna need math for like adding up your damage. If you're playing a physical game, you don't have a deck tracker to do that for you. So you got to think about that and actually like look at your cards, figure that out, do that math in your head. If you're in a competition, sometimes they don't allow you to take notes, or you can't use, apps and stuff. Like you can only do it by taking notes, depending on the game. there is like the math of even calculating, as Denka said, like the resources, right? Like how much land do you have to spend next turn? What are the costs of your cards? How are you have to do a little bit of math, even if it's basic math, just to figure out like what you have to spend and what you can spend that on, how many different cards you can play or not play, and if you're using resources to draw, that has to calculate into like, okay, I've spent X amount on drawing a card first. Now I only have this amount left to actually make plays. And then you get into, again, like the probability when you start drawing cards. You know, are you looking for a certain thing? If so, what's the probability that you're going to find the thing you're looking for? Some card games like Pokemon has a very more like direct, like you go searching in your deck for specific things, so that kind of negates that. So again, this does depend a little bit on what card game you're playing, but I would say all of that does have to be calculated into like the game overall, but then especially when you look at it in terms of when to take risks. um the biggest things that I think of is kind of what Ron mentioned, is like, when am I making this play? And sometimes I actually have to stop myself and say, if I'm not playing this now, when am I ever playing it? And it's
Right.
like, if I'm not playing it now, it's never getting played. So then I have to calculate, like, is now the time that I just go for it? Or do I just never play it? And I have to be okay with that. So to me,
Mhm.
that's one of like the standout, like when you're in a game and you have to actually question that and think about that to yourself. That's like a big risk, and sometimes it could be a high reward, like high risk, high reward kind of scenario. But that's the, situation that's like, that's the big standout to me, is when you get to that situation and you think, if I'm not playing this now, am I ever playing it? It kind of feels like that's can be a kind of big risk turn.
Definitely. And I know one other thing I will say is that a lot of the times, like one trap that can be pretty common is to think, how do I put myself in the best spot? And sometimes in our heads, we think, how do I clear this board with the least resources? How do I do it while keeping my life total as high as I can? And while all of those things are useful and should be part of your analysis, the real question you're trying to answer is which play is most likely to win me the game? And that question is abstract sometimes. All of those different components can be a factor of it. But when you're talking probability, there will be some situations where you make a play that may look really confusing or really weak because you know that your only path to victory exists in a world where that long shot play works. So, like as an example, maybe you are playing a Hearthstone game and it has come down to a race for damage, and your opponent is doing damage faster than you, but they have less health. You might realize, hey, my only way to win is if I send it all face and draw my out. And even though if, this game were to go on forever and you would take way more damage and lose in the long run, that's not the world you live in. You are playing that game as it is with those cards in your hand. Your opponent has theirs and they have that health total. So, like really think through your plays, and you don't have infinite time, but it's okay. Just try to get a little bit faster every time and see, all right, which of these probabilities is leading me to win, not necessarily which one gives me the best board or the best position in just a specific facet of the game.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to make that decision when your back is up against the wall, and like you're in this spot where, okay, there's enough damage represented on board that if my opponent gets an additional turn, I will lose. So I need to find a way to win this game right now. And there are certain cards in my deck that enable that to happen. Um, so at that point, you kind of have to throw all caution to the wind and say, I need to sell out on exactly this thing. Again, for a Hearthstone example, a card like Grifta. Grifta can steal one of your opponent's minions if you roll the right outcome. You might not be holding him in your hand, but you might have zero possibility of winning unless you first draw him and then play him and get the correct outcome, which will then take the big minion on your opponent's side of the board and win the game. And every single other play that you have will lose. So if you have draw cards in your hand, you play the draw card and then you play the other draw card and you hopefully find the card you're looking for. And then if you do, you hopefully hit that, and then that's your chance of winning. If you miss, or if you did any other things, you were going to lose anyway. So those situations are a lot easier to identify and be like, okay, I need to go for this and I need to go for this now. It's a lot more interesting and complex when you're faced with a similar type of situation, but you don't have the alarm bells yet. You don't know it for sure that, hey, this is about to be over, but there's certain levels of just comfortability with the game that you're playing, the sense of where am I at and the feel for what's going to happen soon, where it's a lot harder to identify, is this the moment? Is this the moment where I need to go and take that higher risk play because the reward for it is so great, and the other options wind up typically maybe treading water but not helping me towards that end goal of winning the game.
100%.
Mhm.
And even then, this gets more complex. All these situations that we've talked about are ones where, well, it is a question of probability. We have complete information. And there are some situations where we don't. The old classic, do they have the board clear? Do I
Mhm.
go wide or don't I? And
Surely they don't have it. They already used two of their board clears.
some of us know the truth. They never have it. So why
Mhm.
bother? But really, it's a little more, there's a little bit more information that you can parse out. So in Hearthstone, one of the great things about our game is that your opponent can't move their hand around. Those cards are exactly where they left them on your screen. And you will maybe in your deck tracker see this, or if you watch high level streamers, they'll talk about this, but they'll say which cards are held in hand. And this information is valuable because there is a difference in probability about whether a card is brawl or not if that card was held for turns 1 through 4, or if it was drawn off the top. The held card is more likely to be the one since it wasn't used. So a lot of times players will be looking at information like that and say, I think that because my opponent has this, they might have brawl. And while it's not conscious all the time, players are assigning probability to that and making a judgment about whether that card is in fact brawl or if it's something else. So, the best players in the world are the best at assigning that probability. And to just be pretty good, you just need to get in the game. So if you're playing a game of Magic across the table, try to think about how many cards your opponent has held in their hand, whether in the late game they've decided to continue playing lands or stop, why they're doing what they're doing. And in Hearthstone, keep an eye on cards. If your opponent is playing and on turn 3 they play, you know, a 3-drop, just a card in the deck, you might be able to guess that that card is not Gorgon Zormu. And you can sort of rule those other cards out that it would have made sense for it to be. And eventually you'll get to a point where even though you can't see your opponent's hand, you have a good idea of it. And I'll have to dig up the tapes, but I know I've played some games against Michael here, Mr. Mexico, and Lotus, and you can see on either side of the stream on THL who has the idea of who's in what's hand. And I know, like, I've gone back, and on both sides, I think our team and your team basically were playing hands down, even though, we don't actually get to literally see the cards. We,
Yeah.
we know what the other person has, and that can be pretty cool. So, test out that skill yourself, give it a shot, and see what you learn.
The funniest part is when you're in a situation where it's like, well, I know that they can't have this card in their hand because they would be completely insane to have not already played it in this previous situation when it was obviously the best play by far. And yet sometimes they still do have it, and they just, for whatever unhinged reason, did not make their best play. Maybe it's even a a spicy mind game where it's like, okay, they will be convinced that I don't have this card if I don't play it in this spot where I absolutely should. And I'm going to try to use like 3 other resources to approximate what this one card would have done. And then they will play into this card because they think there's no shot I'm holding it. Um, and then there's other times, of course, where you get that assessment correct. Obviously, they don't have the card because it'd be crazy for them to have not already played it. So the only way that they beat me now, because I know that their hand is comprised of not that card, and that card's the only one that beats me, the only way they beat me is if they draw it off the top.
Yep.
And then they draw it off the top. And then
Yep.
the cursing happens.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
And, probability, once again, like in a game that is, not necessarily across the table, like Hearthstone, even more like short game like Marble Snap or Pokemon TCG Pocket, where you're playing a ton. Good players have a 55% win rate, an average player has a 50% win rate. And if you're playing 20 games, the difference between good and average is 1 game. That's it. Going from 10 wins in 20 to 11. So just making those small choices and making them a little bit better will not help you out in an average game. In any given game, you're going to have the same result. So don't get discouraged if are only play like a couple games of something a week with your friends and you don't start winning. But you'll notice in the long term that you will start doing better. And as you're starting to do better, you'll also be developing and improving at the skill. And once your, rate of progress really goes up, you'll start to see those returns a little bit more quickly. Then if you're playing a game online or playing in tournaments, you'll start playing against better opponents and you'll start to lose again and need to keep solving that puzzle. But that's one of the things some of us love about card games, and yeah, welcome to the fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think there's definitely something to be said for like experience as well. And we've kind of mentioned like intuition. It's like, well, how do you build up that intuition and that kind of the knowledge base that you both have mentioned too is by playing more games and understanding these things and kind of paying attention to what your opponent is holding, knowing the cards in the meta, like what cards could they have for removal or what is their deck even doing, like we've talked about with meta, like understanding the decks in the meta. And all of that does come with experience, as well as the math and probability. And I think we can like probably do an entire topic on like diving into how to build up these habits and like build those up over time and get better at this stuff. But just to kind of like skim the surface, I mean, just playing and building up your knowledge of, again, like the meta, the decks, the cards themselves, and kind of spotting patterns and recognizing those things is going to help you so you don't have to do that math all the time. You'll just kind of, intuitively already kind of be doing that math without even realizing it. You'll build that skill, as well as kind of recognizing some of those patterns or some of those times, like Ron said, where, maybe it's you're back against the wall and you have to like take a risk or, play a certain card or not play a certain card. All of that is like skills that you can build up over time. And I say they're skills because it's, as Dankist mentioned, right? Like there is kind of a fine line between average player, good player, great player. Like they're incremental, very small decisions and things that are built up based on how much you play, how much you can spot those patterns, do that math, all of that stuff. But it is a skill that you can build in all of those ways. So definitely something that you can learn and build on. It's not just something that like, oh, that that person's like a prodigy and they're just amazing at the game. Like you can build up those skills and get there too. Maybe not to the same level depending on how much time you commit, but it's a skill you can build up.
Yeah, and there's definitely different aspects of like how to improve or how to try to exploit your advantages when you're presented with them, or how to identify like what the correct probability decision is at each given point in the game. And depending on the deck that you might be playing too, there's a lot of ways to assess that. I mean, if you get enough practice with it, you could literally just be like in a game with a friend and running the math on each probability if you want to like learn how that would be. That could be like extremely effort intensive to a point that might not really pay off the amount of dividends that you might want it to. But there's always a way to just reinforce and get stronger and stronger with a certain type of thing. So you'll know more in those situations you're faced with what to do. And that's what extremely high level players will do when they're practicing for the major tournaments, is they're trying to find different situations that would be very unfamiliar or uncomfortable that might present themselves in a high level tournament. So it's not the very first time that they're faced with this decision. And given how many permutations there are in card games, inevitably that's still going to happen, but they're trying to account for as many different ways that they can prepare for that as possible. And then identify those situations in advance, try to work out probably probability wise what's the best thing that I can do in this situation. And that has a lot of math attached to it, where it's like, okay, well, what are the cards in my deck? I might have some specific tutor draw effects, and that would change based on how many total of this type of card I have. So I could go for this decision right now, knowing that there's a X% chance that I hit this one thing. And is that better than using my limited resources to do something else that helps more right now, but doesn't help more in the long run? So there's a whole lot of like branching decisions that come from the first decision and just keep compounding on itself. So the more you play, the more you learn a deck or a matchup or something, the more complex it might get. But also, as you do it more and more, you start to recognize those different patterns, and you start to see the moments where it's like that combination of probability and intuition, where it's like, okay, now this, like, the feel of this game tells me this is the moment, and I've done this enough and I know some probabilities about what I can do, that I think this gives me a pretty good chance. And usually it's too much to try to put a number on it. But you can be like, I feel like this is in the range of what I want. Ranges are a lot better to stick to, I think, than any specific like hard and fast number. But yeah, it's all like repetition and practice, and the more you do it, the more you invest into it, the easier it is to pay off. But it's a lot of work.
100%. And like just to kind of go off on that part again, like you are not trying to find the perfect best answer every time, because you won't. Like especially during an actual game. Like, I'm not the best player on earth, but I am no slouch. And with another group of people who were no slouches, I was helping them go through some replays for Naga Priest a few years ago. And if you remember this deck, very hard. And it took us about an hour and 15 minutes to go through one game of Naga Priest, crunching every probability that we could and trying to find the best play every turn. So, in a real game of Hearthstone, you probably have about 7 or 8 minutes to make all of those decisions total. And on any given turn, you can't take 10 minutes to decide what the best play is. You just have to come close enough to the answer that you are going to be winning more than other people in the same position as you. And, that's not super easy, but it is doable. And, like in a real game, if you find that you are struggling with a particular subject, right? Like if you're trying to figure out what are the odds that I will draw 3 spells off of these effects in my turn? If I'm playing a really confusing deck like Garrote Rogue, how can I sequence this so that I have the best odd of drawing every Garrote out of my deck and not just end up in a spot where there are some stuck? How do I minimize that? And you're not going to figure out that answer right away, and that's okay. But figure out which part of that stumped you, practice that outside the game, and then when you get back in a similar spot next time, that same sort of math will abstract to that situation, and you can use that same exercise in probability to solve the problem or do some napkin math, approximate it, and focus on another more novel part of the situation that should need more of your time.
And for those less mathematically inclined, YOLO. Just
Send it.
send it. Surely it'll work out. It's
Yeah.
probably fine.
If you're anything like me, you'll do that, and then you'll immediately be like, why did I play that? I should have done this other thing. That was dumb.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love doing that on stream, by the way, where I make a play and like I had plenty of time in my turn, and I just like slam a card and I'm like, why did I do that? What why would I have done that play just now? That was not the right move. All right. Now we need to reassess in this new world where I've made this mistake. What's the best play post mistake?
Well,
that could be its
usually I
own
want to
topic,
follow
too.
up my mistakes with a 2-drop, but what do I know?
Nice.
That's a wild joke now. That really pains me.
It was a classic Masters Tour Worlds joke, I think, from Pocket, when they were talking about how he played pretty much like mistake free, and he was like, "Well, if you go back, I did. There was a mistake on turn 1." I think he said. It's fantastic.
Never gets old.
Yep.
All right. Let's wrap up. Let me ask you each if you could give somebody just kind of one piece of advice for risk taking in card games. What would that advice be?
Just one, huh?
Yep.
Well, I would say try to get yourself to the point where you can recognize the moment. I can't really like sum it up any better than just calling like that moment of I need to take this risk as like the moment. And there's plenty of games where it will be apparent, and it might only be apparent after you've played the game, where you're like, oh, that was the moment. But the more games that you play, the more likely you are to recognize it in real time and be like, oh, okay, this is the moment. Now is the time that I need to take that risk.
Definitely. I think the advice that I would give is not to be afraid of risks, and also be honest with yourself. I know that it's tough, but when you are playing a game against someone who you can admit is the better player, be more open to taking risks. You know that if they're going to make more accurate choices than you over the course of the whole game, that is in your benefit to invite variance into the situation so that you can make your own luck and beat that player sometimes. And conversely, if you're going against someone who you feel that you're better than, look at the ways that you can minimize your own risk, but also limit your opponent's ability to take them. Because the more variables that are added to the game, the more that your accurate decisions cease to matter and that variance takes over. So, risk is a tool in your arsenal in dealing with players of other skill levels. And, like if you are the weaker player, just admit it. It doesn't hurt. You can say, "Yeah, I'm never gonna beat Pocket Train in this game in this best 3 out of 5. Let me just roll the dice." And about half of THL succeeded in that roll, so go for it. It'll be great.
True. Yeah. I mean, even the best players in the game, don't sport higher than like a 60% win rate, it's pretty impossible to maintain with a game with this much like randomness and variance. Like pretty much any card game, but especially in light of Hearthstone that leans into more random effects. So yeah, I mean, if you're in that spot where you're like, oh, I'm playing against a really strong player, I don't know if I can win this. Yogg, take the wheel.
Amen.
Awesome. I think as for me, I will say, when you're looking at taking risks or trying to get better at like taking risks or recognizing the moment, as Ron says, um, don't focus too much on the results of the risk, because oftentimes like making the right plays or making plays is either variable depending on what's happening in that game specifically, and it's not going to be like the same for every single game, or you can actually find patterns where that is the right choice most of the time, regardless of what the results say. So I would say just don't focus too much on the actual results. Focus on like the process and recognizing, um, and kind of, you can still use results, but don't like focus on them as the, well, I shouldn't have done that, or I should have done that. I won because I did that one specific thing. Maybe you did, but is that the right choice in all of the games? I don't know. So that's my advice. Don't focus too much on the results.
I think that's a really good point, actually,
Yes,
because
very.
like identifying, for instance, that you have a 0% chance to win if you do every other play and a 20% chance to win if you do this one play. In a one game sample size, that outcome is usually identical, the 0 and the 20, because you're going to lose. You're going to lose 4 times out of every 5, but you'd lose 5 out of 5 if you went with the 0% play. You lose 4 out of 5 going with the 20% play. But if you focus on the fact I did the 20% play and I still lost, why I shouldn't have done that, then you're losing sight of what helps you in the long run. So really, really good point. I like that a lot.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for walking through that topic with me. I appreciate you guys. Always awesome to deep dive into some of these topics. And we have some more topic ideas, but if there's anything that any of you want to hear, definitely let us know. There are tons of ways that you can reach out to us. You can email us at tccgroundtable@protonmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at tccgroundtable. We have a top pinned tweet where you can join our Discord. You can jump in there, start up some discussions. We're always, looking to have people join the Discord and chat in there. You can check out the video version of the show on my YouTube channel, which is also YouTube Dragon Rider TCCG, in addition to live streaming it on Twitch every week. You can find the show wherever you can find audio podcasts. And if you want some cool stuff or to help us out monetarily, we have a couple of ways to do that. You can check out our Inked Gaming affiliate link and find some cool stuff over there, like playmats, card game sleeves, other accessories, even customizable ones. You can check out Amber Flight Gaming, which we are all a part of, at on Twitter at AFlight Gaming. You can also find us on Facebook and Blue Sky. And you can check out our AFG merch at exclaim.gg/store/AFG. All right. Where can people find us individually? Ron, let's start with you.
Absolutely. So you can find me on Twitter at Ron_HS, where typically I will just tweet that I'm going live on Twitch. I don't really use that site for anything else. Anyway, you could also find me streaming on Twitch Monday through Friday, right around 7 p.m. Eastern, typically at Ron Mexico HS.
Awesome. All right, Zankist.
So, unlike 50 Cent, you will not find me in the club, but you will find me on YouTube and Twitch as Nankist Dad CCG. you'll see my articles on Amber Flight Gaming site, and I know we'll have one coming to you soon to write up my experiences at Nationals for Universes. So look to check that out at the end of the month. You can also find me in Discord as Dekastad, and of course on the streets of Ohio. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Well, as for me, you can find me on Twitter, DonnieDK, DAWNIEDK. You can find me on YouTube, Twitch, and Blue Sky, Dragon Rider TCCG. And you can find me also talking all things standard Hearthstone over on the Dr. 3 HS podcast. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us this week. We hope that you enjoyed this week's episode, and we'll see you at the Roundtable.